Hello. Uh, Now I will continue with the seventh remark on introduction to business immorality and corporate social irresponsibility. The last remark was concerning egoism, selfishness, self-interest, and corporate social irresponsibility. And in the present one, I will cover only a small portion of previously published paper by Jelena Debeljak, Ivana Buslita-Banks, and myself, acquiring CSR practices from deception to authenticity. Well, mostly I will cover just an argument, which seems to be of some importance for the present approach to the issue, and some aspects surrounding context of the argument which are relevant for its understanding. Okay, so this is it. I will skip introductory elements of paper, and especially a section concerning the care ethics view, which should be or could be understood as a kind of environment in which the present argument should be understood more naturally. Okay. Now, perhaps I should turn now to the so-called epistemological part of our paper. And the general issue of topic of the paper is that CSR should move from deception to authenticity, from its advertising, commercials aspect toward its pragmatic aspect. And how it should be done and why it should be done. Specific aspect of this change of perspective is epistemological one, in fact. If to be, I'm reading it now, if to be socially responsible means to perform in a certain way, then knowledge of CSR is not theoretical knowledge, know that. Rather, it's practical knowledge, know-how. A piece of epistemology would be that know-how is a basic type of knowledge, and that know that is a derived type of it. Also, this is in fact it's called Ryleanism in epistemology, specifically in Ryleanism intellectualism debate, and it's perhaps it can be described as a radical anti-intellectualist standpoint. Okay, this is implied. Okay, but it will not be discussed in detail. Also, there is a kind of middle knowledge between know-how and know-that, namely knowledge of manual, so to say. The basic kind of know-how is knowledge by imitation. Children imitate their parents, teenagers imitate their heroes, workers imitate their bosses, and so on and so forth. Now, regarding CSR, imitation is somewhat complicated, since what one tries to imitate is what one recognizes as the best practice, for instance, in the field, and one then accommodates this best practice into her own business ideas and goals. Some practices are far more complicated cases than simple imitation of a particular gesture or sound by a child. Some of them require knowledge by skill or even by extreme expertise and experience. And therefore, knowledge by imitation requires knowledge by manual and practice. The pragmatic account of CSR, formulated in the previous sections, blah, 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 which is basically pragmatism and corporate social responsibility combined in a consistent, more or less consistent way. Okay. The pragmatic account of CSR from the previous section, as I said, under the light of these epistemological clarification, has some relevant advantages over rival accounts such as utilitarian, Kantian, or virtue business ethics. And some of these advantages are the following. This is a kind of review. The pragmatic concept of CSR seems to leave enough space for a clear distinction between social responsibility and irresponsibility, since any neglect of any stakeholder group that should be taken care of, and in fact it is not, is a clear case of social irresponsibility, CSI. This is practically important for dealing with cases in the gray area especially. On the other hand, this concept leaves enough space for the distinction between difference in degree of CSR and difference in kind of CSR. Finally, third thing, this notion of CSR does not leave much space for the alleged gap between CSI ideology and CSI marketing of a particular corporation, for example, on its website or TV commercials of its own goods and services, and CSR real action on the other hand. The last point naturally leads one to the idea of CSR authenticity, which can be understood in the following manner. If a corporation has a comparatively smaller gap between CSR ideology and marketing and CSR reality, then such a corporation is more authentic, while if it has comparatively larger gap, then it is less authentic. For stages of maturity of CSR activity, one should see Crowther 2008, especially page 28. In this paper, these levels, these stairway to CSR is really described in detail and with utmost precision, and even some how should I put it? Even some practical ways of measuring achieving each and every particular step are suggested. Therefore, it's applicable. It's not that theoretical distinction between different levels. It's also a kind of there is a possibility of practical application. Okay, that's it. Now let me turn to another issue. A kind of, not epistemological, perhaps some kind of moral aspect of it. Let me start with some already mentioned concept of bullshit by Harry Frankfurt from his book of same title. And in fact, his argument at the end of the book, which runs as follows. So Frankfurt 2005, pages 65 to 67. The quote runs as follows. The contemporary proliferation of deceit also has a deeper sources in various forms of skepticism which deny that we can have any reliable access to an objective reality, and which therefore reject the possibility of knowing how things truly are. These anti-realist doctrines undermine confidence in the value of disinterested efforts to determine what is true and what is false. One response to this loss of confidence has been a retreat from the discipline required by the dedication to the idea of correctness, a quite different sort of discipline which is imposed by the pursuit of an alternative ideal of sincerity. He devotes himself to being true to his own nature, true to himself. But it is preposterous to imagine that we ourselves are determined both to correct and to incorrect description, and as conscious beings, we exist only in response to other things, and we cannot know ourselves at all without knowing them, other things. Moreover, there is nothing in theory, and certainly nothing in experience, to support the extraordinary judgment that it is the truth about himself that is the easiest for a person to know. Facts about ourselves are not peculiarly solid and resistant to skeptical dissolution. Our natures are indeed elusively insubstantial, notoriously less stable and less inherent than the natures of other things. And insofar as this is the case, sincerity itself is a bullshit. Now, this is, in fact, this argument, if it is an argument, can be used against our starting point. What does it mean to move from this deceptive CSR toward authentic? What is deceptive CSR? This is CSI, in fact. This is CSI. If a company deceives its customers, buyers, shareholders, all groups of stakeholders, after all. So this is CSI. And the content of this particular type of CSI is, in fact, deceitful CSR. That's it. There's only marketing in front of you. Nothing behind it. Okay. In most cases, there is nothing behind, nothing deeper, because phenomena are the doctrine, as Goethe taught us. So there is no essence inside, there is a morphology. And so far as this is the case, even worse for such companies, because what they do is completely, it can be argued that this is completely immoral. And now, what is the point with this authenticity thing? What does it mean to be authentic? It doesn't, surely it doesn't mean to be that one should be true to him or herself. What does it mean to be true to yourself? This is complete bullshit. There is no true ourselves. What is true ourselves? What does this mean? From some deep essence, some personal thing. Person, it comes from prosopon, all Greek. It means a mask in a theater. No, the person is political, economic, legal concept, not metaphysical. There are no persons. There is no authenticity in this particular sense, meaning of the word authentic. So what is the possibility then to be authentic? To be authentic. Well, the only possibility for understanding authenticity in CSR is to understand it as a kind of narrative, a story that more or less correctly and perspicuously describes what we actually do. So first we observe what a company does, actually, and then we compare what it does and its actions, real actions, with the description, company's descriptions of her own actions. And if there is a kind of consistency between actions and description, well, this is authenticity. There is no other kind of authenticity, in my personal opinion. Okay, the authors disagree a little bit on this matter, but we skipped these disagreements and we just pointed out moments on which we agree, because this is an academic thing, concerning the papers with more than one author or co-authorship. Okay, but there are other myths on the other hand, and this myth of authentic CSR is also, it goes along with other myths. So let me just mention a few of them in order for you to get the picture. The myth about the free market system, the myth about scarce resources, the myth about virtually unlimited preferences, the myth about maximum rationality, the myth about rational egoism, the myth about the profit motive, notably about disbelief in the invisible hand, the myth about objective corporate reporting, the myth about oil, guns, and similar as clean businesses, etc., etc. So this myth about authentic CSR nicely goes along with these other myths. No matter if it seems to be an opposite one, it is the myth of the same sort. Yeah. And now the argument itself. The argument itself is quite simple. First, if now I will show the table. The table is important. Okay, if it's possible, let me adjust it. Yeah, this is the table. Okay, this one. This is another. This is a graphical presentation of the distinctions between CSR and CSI and the sequences of the argument. Okay, let me now read it. First, if lack of knowledge, no debt and know-how, or ignorance of CSR and CSI is a necessary condition for deceit regarding CSR and CSI, then the elimination of this lack of knowledge results in the elimination of deceit. It is impossible, or at least highly improbable, for a deceit to succeed if all relevance-involved parties possess relevant knowledge, no debt and know-how, of some topic or particular procedure or practice. There is nothing to be deceitful about. Therefore, the elimination of ignorance or lack of knowledge of CSR and CSI results in the elimination of insincerity. And what we get is a space for authenticity in terms that I just described a few minutes ago. Corollary to this argument, there are two corollaries. I will read them both. Now, first one. However, in such circumstances, one can try to be deceitful if we supply no debt and know-how. But there is a high probability that one will fail to succeed. A piece of practical procedure planning would be that certain balance between the market, the government, and the media influence is needed in making such knowledge available, no debt and know-how. And strong law enforcement against various kinds of deceit, lying, and other kinds of fraud must be obtained in order to escape two possible unwarranted situations. The first is the situation in which availability, this is the second corollary, the first situation in which availability of knowledge is lesser than willingness to be deceitful, which makes deceit possible. The second is the situation in which the amount of strong law enforcement attempts in terms of sections is less than actual number of deceitful attempts, which allows an insincere person, legal person, insincere person to go on unrecognized and unpunished. In the first scenario, the external stakeholders become ignorant of the whole situation, and the whole situation rolls back to the previous unfortunate state. In the second scenario, the external stakeholders become less and less deceit sensitive, so to speak. Consequently, one ends up with corruption becoming a commonality, and as it is the case of Southeast European countries and other places with a high corruption index. This was written at the moment where the Transparency International launched its index, and particularly Croatia was quite high. It means it was highly corrupted state. Few things change from these days until nowadays, but I'm not so sure about the correctness of this data. Okay, and now I will finish with some elements of how this kind of CSR should be introduced, and what does it mean to switch from inauthentic or deceitful CSR to authentic CSR, meaning CSR which is a kind of consistency between practices of a particular company and what a practice says about its activities. If these two are consistent, then this is in fact authentic CSR. Any other case of more or less inconsistency is in fact deceitful CSR, or in fact it's CSI. Now, this change of aspect, change of perspective should be made in a society by help of various institutions. And since I belong to academic institutions, we also should do our part, and we have a certain responsibility toward making it so. And on academic level, various things should be done. First of all, the academic persons, schools, colleges, universities, should themselves, they should manifest CSR as authentic CSR, and not just concerning their core business, producing new generations, but also concerning their own activities and relations toward other parts of society. This is important. And so my own activity as a professor at business school and at university should be evaluated in this particular way. How much and in which way do I contribute to achieving such kinds of authentic CSR, and how I act and as a professional, how I act as a professional, and how I describe my actions. If these two are consistent, that I am myself, I am socially responsible person, physical person, okay, and a part of legal person, as a part of legal person. But if there is no inconsistency, then I'm deceitfully CSR, or I'm engaged in CSI. Well, it's not for me to say am I CSR or not. Perhaps it's something that my students or colleagues or peers should say. This is it. This is the short remark. How should we move from CSI or deceitful CSR as a CSI toward authentic corporate social responsibility? Now we start to move from CSI toward CSR. And this movement should be slow, self-conscious, justified, and done in proper manner. Okay, so this is the end of the remark. Thank you.